from the board. I think this isn't the first time we've had citizen input that we've heard from the public.
Well, as opposed to doing a response to the many statements that were made tonight as they were made, I've written down a long list of answers to many of the questions that were raised tonight. And there was confusion about the amount of recreation space and open space committed to in the master plan. The figure is 1,987 acres. That's in the plan. It's on page 28 and 29. So that's a reality. It's a commitment that the developer has made through coordination with the town. And there was a question of whether or not this vote would abdicate control. There was another comment about breaking it up into manageable pieces. What is before this board right now is a rezoning and a master plan that requires of the developer to develop 12 different plans that, if in fact they do not develop these plans to the satisfaction of the town, their development is limited to 5% of the residential density proposed and 15% of the commercial, well, the non-residential. And the 12 plans are these: a tree protection plan, a master signage plan, a master parking and loading plan, a master lighting plan, a master landscaping plan, detailed development phasing plan, affordable housing plan, detailed master public facilities plan, which will address the following: town administration, police, fire, schools, parks and recreation, water supply and distribution, sewer collection and treatment, a master transit plan, a master open space plan, a master stormwater manual, and a master public art plan. Those are things that this master plan commits the developer to do. Commits them to do that within 2 years. Commits the developer to do that within 2 years and provide a payment to the town to the tune of $300,000 a year to cover the town's expenses for reviewing those plans, for entering into a development agreement with the developer, which will state how the process will be funded and what the obligations are and when it will occur. Those funds will also go towards hiring outside consultants that we've been hearing about to review these plans, also to develop a unified development ordinance. There was a comment made that the unified development ordinance should not be written by the developer. Agreed. What is on the table is funding for the town to hire consultants to do that. Reviewing these plans will require public input. Developing a unified development ordinance will require public input. The unified development ordinance will be the codification of the vision of Pittsboro. Right now we have a disparate set of ordinances. We've got a zoning ordinance, a landscape ordinance, a lighting ordinance, a subdivision ordinance, a watershed protection ordinance. We've got all these things that are not connected. They conflict with each other. There are errors, there are omissions. So the funding will help the town make the investment to correct that. All of the standards that are established in that unified development ordinance will be applicable to Chatham Park. I would suspect that a lot of the information coming out of the plans developed by Chatham Park will inform and be a benefit to the town as a whole and could be adopted and rolled into unified development ordinance. So there's an opportunity here for synergy between the town's vision and the developer's vision, and for that to meet and be aligned. There was reference to financial plans and transportation impact analysis plans. Another component of the limitation on the development embedded in the master plan is a requirement that prior to the development exceeding 15% of the designated development within any section of the project, they will have to provide a small area plan for that section. There are 27 sections to Chatham Park. The small area plans will be required to show the location and quantity of the proposed uses, a transportation planning analysis, water and sewer demand projections, road layout and typologies based on the NCDOT adopted Complete Streets program, proposed water distribution and sewer collection and treatment network, stormwater management plan, public facilities, location of historic sites, a public art concept, open space, financial impact analysis, and environmental features to include streams, buffers, wetlands, steep slopes, significant natural heritage areas, upland, marine, mature hardwood forests, sub-watersheds containing federally listed aquatic species, gangland hunting safety buffers. All of that is required to be documented and presented to the town for the town's review and approval. So the rezoning is a first step where we can engage in development of the specific questions and plans that everyone is requesting. The next level is something at a small area plan, which is of 27 sections. Once the small area plans are established, each subsequent development, its own site plan, its own subdivision plan, will have to comply with that small area plan. So at every step of the way, the town is engaged with the developer. There was discussion about stormwater management and stream delineation forms, and I would tell John that the stream delineation forms will be established at the time of the site plan, because that's when you want to review if the stream is present, because that's when the impact is imminent. And that is how the ordinance is presently written. This project will have to adhere to the existing zoning ordinances and subdivision ordinances until these other plans are developed. And again, limited 5% and 15%. We've recently adopted the Jordan rules for buffers as well as stormwater management. They are very rigid, very strict, very complicated systems to extract nutrient from development sites before it is tributary to the lake and to the stream. We have required of this developer something that is not required of anybody else in the town of Pittsboro, but I expect through the UDO we will implement this system. And it is the management of stormwater from a flood prevention and what Neville had mentioned about the downstream impacts. It's what John Alderman has said all along: keep post-development hydrograph within the pre-development hydrograph. That means you don't have a peak discharge that is outside the natural condition prior to development. We have we're in discussions right now with the county to transfer erosion control management from the state, which is unable to do an adequate job for Pittsboro. And so to transfer that to the county so that they are on site, they are here, they are able to do the inspections when it should be done properly. There was talk about, is this the right place for development as it relates to the environment? And I would suggest that I think preservation of farmland, preservation of the environment can best be done throughout the county if we focus on cluster development in the municipalities. I think that preserves far more land by focusing density in the municipalities. Regarding the concept of annexation, included in the master plan is a requirement that the developer, on submittal of a site plan, a subdivision plan, and/or a small area plan, put in with that application a voluntary request for annexation, so that the tax revenue is realized as this project develops, not prior to it, but timed properly, so the town services are there to serve that development. There's a lot of talk about how the utilities are going to be laid out, and what this master plan does is it commits the developer to solve those problems. The town of Pittsboro cannot afford that. It is unrealistic. Every developer knows that they have to solve those problems. What this plan says is that they will solve those problems to the satisfaction of the town. That will require financial analysis, so that we're comfortable with the systems that are being designed, so that we can manage them and maintain them. And it will be in a cost-effective way for the town to do that. So every step of the way, the developer does not have carte blanche with the master plan as it is presently prepared. Some of the history is that 7 years ago they started purchasing land, and they had a vision at that time. And all along, they have stated they want to be in Pittsboro. They want to be a member of the community of Pittsboro. They've asked the county to modify the ETJ. ETJ was modified in preparation of being under the sole zoning jurisdiction of Pittsboro, being in a single jurisdiction. They've worked with us. They have proposed a new zoning district, the planned development district. It is not uncommon for developers to propose text amendments to ordinances. That was worked through, and it was adopted. They have subsequently come in the door with a master plan, which is a requirement, a condition, if you will, of the request for the rezoning. Town staff, Commissioner Baldwin and I, schools, fire, police, got together to review the plan and shared that with the community by issuing a response to the developer. We think that we have been listening very well to everyone's interests. And we think we have found a way to distill and instill those interests into this master plan. The master plan must be agreed to. The conditions of this plan must be agreed to between the developer and the town. I think we have a very good plan right here. It has safeguards in it that keeps the idea of carte blanche from happening. As somebody said, there are touch points all along. There is every opportunity for citizen input to shape this project. And we have an opportunity to take advantage of this opportunity that this developer is presenting. For those reasons, I am in support of this project, and I'm in support of this rezoning request. There was some mention early on about the election and positions taken. And I think you will see that throughout my campaign, I campaigned on the idea of partnership with the developer to get the best deal for Pittsboro. I believe wholeheartedly to be in partnership with the developer is better than to be at odds with the developer. They have expressed an enormous amount of trust with the town of Pittsboro by agreeing to this development limitation. It is really an extraordinary statement of trust. They don't know who's going to be sitting up here 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 6 years from now, whose minds might change, and yet they are willing to limit their development until they satisfy the town with all these additional issues and plans that will form the vision of Pittsboro. We have an opportunity to influence this development if we work with the developer. I think we have a better chance to influence it and to make it the thing we want it to be by working with them and not against them.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other commissioners or kind of speak on this?
I just have a question. Are we still in public input, or are we moving to agenda items? Because this is sounding a lot like what's on our agenda.
We can move. We're not going to be handling the audit. That was removed, so.
Yeah, but just having part plan development. Are we moving it, or are we still in citizen?
Well, I asked for comment afterward, but I mean, I think at this point, the board has heard it's a discussion. People have wanted to have the discussion. We've had meetings, but never so many people where we've had this many folks in the room at one time. I think was very positive. And obviously, that's what we hoped would happen, to get more people involved. I do think that there were a couple mistakes made, and it was brought to my attention, and I wish that we could have reversed that. Mayor-elect Terry referred to it. It would have been nice, had, when the meetings happened, we could have had folks sitting in the room, much like we did in the past. We advocated for that. It's kind of like crying over spilt milk at this point, but that's something that I supported. This board knows I supported it. Mayor-elect Terry's pointed that out, and I think in the future, if there are committees formed, as have been mentioned and stipulated, you've got to have everybody in the room. And I mentioned in the past when we did the transportation plan, and Clinton Bryan Jr. and myself and Michael Fiocco were at the meetings, there were always members of the public and the Triangle region in the room. That doesn't mean that it turns into a circus, but everybody was there who wanted to be there. Now, I will let a lot of folks know, Emily Wimbus was the last speaker, so this is maybe directed toward young people, but unfortunately in my career, going around the Triangle to these regional meetings, and Pam is the chair of the Triangle J Council of Governments, we just don't see much of the public at the meetings. They are noticed, but people either are too busy, or working too many jobs, or too distracted, we're not involved in a lot of these things, and we're relying on the elected officials to make the right decision. But it would be nice that if we did have more members of the public at some of these meetings. It just doesn't happen. Now, in my travels around the state, I'm often asked, how do we get young people to get involved? These are coming from community groups, and I said, well, stop having, breakfast meetings at 7 in the morning on Saturday. I play music, I'm asleep at 7 in the morning. You need to do this in the afternoon. Most of these people have kids, they're going to soccer games, or if they don't have kids, they're probably not up at 7 in the morning and they don't want biscuits and gravy. But that's kind of the way North Carolina's culture has been, is to do these meetings early in the morning, and, frankly, I'm not an early morning guy, so I don't go to all these meetings. I'll admit it, I don't like to get up and go to a 7 a.m. meeting. I would like to comment on a few things were said. When Mayor-elect Terry, he was our town manager, and previous boards hired him. He worked capably as our town manager, and he made some points. I'm just going to go straight on the record again. I supported getting the permit that we need for the wastewater treatment plant, but I do not support, and I will not support, as the Mayor Emeritus, or whatever your role is, the Honorable Randy Buller, I do not support a discharge or a lot of discharge into the Palm River. I think that it's incumbent on this project and the folks to find a regional solution. I don't support it. Now, that's not really on the table for tonight, but I didn't support it then, I don't support it now. It is true that this board did give Mr. Terry the charge to work on wastewater treatment plant. I mean, there's been different members of this board. You know, when I started off, it was a wholly different board in 2005. In fact, some of the board members are no longer with us. Mayor May has passed away, who passed the gavel to me. Hopefully between now and December 9th, I won't have a heart attack, Bill, and I'll pass this to you. But a lot of the folks are not here that were sitting on those boards previously, including Clinton Bryan's father. And we did have those discussions about how do we fix this vexing problem. And one of the things we did was we chose to upgrade technology at our wastewater treatment plant because, as was mentioned by Commissioner Fiocco and probably others who have spoken, it is very expensive to build a wastewater treatment plant. You're talking dollars, you start getting $8, $10, $12 a gallon. You get all kind of figures on the map, but it's not an inexpensive endeavor. And the town, according to the local government commission, is not in a position to float a bond to do it, which is why I've always advocated for a regional solution and a partnership. Concurrent to this problem is the fact that private entities, and I spoke to Lisa Sorg at the Indy last week about this after she wrote about Aqua America, and then later on Randy Bowler is weeping at the meeting. Lisa and I had a long talk, and I said, look, I know quite a bit about what's been going on in the General Assembly and with privatization, and the fact of the matter is there's a push afoot to put towns like Pittsboro in a position where their enterprise funds don't make money, and they can be forced to privatize. It's in the enabling legislation now passed by a General Assembly, which probably a lot of people in this room don't agree with. I don't agree with them. I don't agree with a lot that's come out this past year. But the change there, and now Aqua America is asking for relief on the requirement to go to the Utilities Commission for rate hikes. I can foresee a future if we don't come together and work together where a lot of these small municipalities, or Siler City that's bigger than us, could be forced in a situation where they have private providers, as the LGC has managed to take their systems, which the law allows you to do now, and they'll have no democracy in dealing with potential rate hikes, which has happened in Latin America. So I oppose that situation occurring. I would like to see public utilities in partnership with the community, that we control the end result. Now, about going south of town and the questions about the chicken plant. When Townsend's got into trouble, then Omtron, which was backed by an eccentric Ukrainian, bought all of their assets. I think it was a tax deal for him. I've never met the Ukrainian. Keith Crisco, a former Commerce Secretary, tried to meet the Ukrainian. We've never met him. But we wanted to talk to him about Pittsboro and Moxville and Siler City, where he cut a bunch of deals and put a lot of farmers into hock and then left, which is a terrible situation for these people, and of course blew a gigantic hole in Siler City's budget because that was their biggest water user, and also put a nasty hole in our budget, upwards of $300,000 a year. We managed, through an awful lot of work and raising rates and doing things people don't like, to get this in line, but it's still an issue. I proposed that the town look at or perhaps buy that property. We weren't able to bring it together. Then Omtron swooped in, and then the Ukrainian would never answer. And now, I proposed that this group buy it because I was afraid that if someone didn't get that out of bankruptcy that we didn't have a relationship with, you would end up with a nasty situation at that chicken plant, which happened in the past. So at least we know who owns it, how to reach the people, and how to have a dialogue with the people about what's to happen on that property. One of the things I was hoping would happen was an eco-industrial park. Building a new biodiesel plant. I talked to Lyle Estill about that idea years ago, if we could get a hold of it, and a whole host of other things that property would be well suited to do based on the population here, what we believe in, and how we can be competitive in green, sustainable energy and green industries going forward, and that site is perfect for it. I was talking to some of the people that live in Potterstone Village earlier, And I was explaining, they asked, well, how did that site end up next to a residential area? And I said, well, the thing is, that site existed long before the residential area, and it was, when it was May Farm, named for the former Nancy May, the mayor, her family, George May, others, they built it. And I remember my father and I saying at the time, I'm not sure that they're gonna like smelling the chicken plant. I mean, that's just the reality. It happened after the fact. Now we have taxpayers and citizens in Powerstone Village who rightfully question what's been going on that property. Now they know that they can talk to someone about the future. Because you're easy to reach. It's not like trying to go to Kiev and get up with this fellow that I never could get up with, neither could the state. But the plan there, as we're in the room here, and I can tell you, was if the town could actually have access to that pond, then we could use the reuse water that we are sending to 3M and get credit for it, so that we don't have to spend resources expanding our plant. Or if we're going to expand, it's going to be over a long period, because we're sending 60,000 gallons a day, I think, Brian, is that correct? Somewhere around there, to 3M. They're buying reuse quality water, and the town of Pittsboro is one of the few towns in the state, in fact, got an award from Diener. Dee Freeman presented it to us while Bill Terry was our manager, and with Charlie Horn and George Sears here. All of us went to this big event at 3M because it was the first time in the state's history that some municipal wastewater treatment plant had managed to do this. And instead of providing potable water, which the city of Sanford was, we were providing them reuse water for their industrial processes, thus a more balanced approach. But we don't get credit for what we send there, meaning that we're discharging there, they're using it, but the state doesn't look at it in the calculations, and it forces us to have to look at expanding when we may not have to. So if we had partnership on this property where we could say, okay, in an extreme event, 30 days of rain, we can, take some of that water and put it into the pond, which can hold 29 million gallons a day. I was told by the applicant you could get it up to 50 million gallons. It would allow Pittsboro to actually have a safety valve and make better use of a reuse water system that really should be built in Powerstone Village, Chatham Forest, all over downtown here, and on the north side of town in Powell Place. We should have a reuse water system, and that is a part of the plan for this going forward. And to do it, we've got to have a partnership, and we've got to have a place to send it. And if we're sending it there, then we may as well partner with Sanford and go all the way there and send it to them too. Why? Because it's a smarter, better thing to do, and send it to the farms. The recent report we got, our town can almost produce grade A quality reuse water, which Randy Hurd, our operator, said you can use for food crops. I know you can grow canola with it and make, oil out of that and make biodiesel out of canola, but you could actually use it for food crops, limited food crops, from what we're producing. These are the kind of things we've been working on for the past 7 years. And these were funded, by the way, by the government. It's a dirty word for a lot of people. I think people in this room might actually think the government is a partner as opposed to a problem. But that was done by ARRA stimulus money that Bob Efforts helped us get, that we actually put into our wastewater treatment plant. So right now, if you have a storm event, we can hold 600,000 or 700,000 gallons there, and the water's not rushing through, and you're getting what's called an event and spilling into Robeson Creek. The credit goes to the staff, Mr. Terry when he was the manager, and this board at the time that pursued that and got the $2.6 million to do it. There's a whole lot of things like that that unfortunately the public doesn't know about because it's mundane, it's not sexy. I mean, I got a lot more interest on the skate park when we did that than these type of things, but these things actually make a difference in how this town operates, the quality of our water, and how we can live. I mean, I see Walter over there chuckling a little bit, but that annoying water project that I pursued and got the town to do, which tore up the roads and made your life miserable for quite a long time, that actually improved the quality of our water. It means that if, God forbid, this courthouse got on fire again, we actually have water pressure down here to fight it. All right? That took a fight to get that money, and we got it. And then we paved the road, and now everything looks a heck of a lot better than it did. I guess they come off automatically. There's a lot of things that we could work together and do. I mean, I think folks have, based on the emails and phone calls I've received, they're wondering, you know, why I'm in favor of pushing this forward. There's a couple of reasons why. Number one, I think that as we get to the end, and I've done my 8 years and I'm going to hand it off, I did not want a new board headed by a new mayor to basically be battling the same argument for however long it could take. I mean, we could be having this discussion for a year. I thought it was time, based on all the input I had gotten from people whom I trust, and I have a lot of trust in Mike Fiocco, a lot of trust in others up here and our staff, that we were at a place that had safeguards and protections that would allow for the things that the public wanted, a 2-year period, limited amount of development, all these plans that Michael has alluded to. I thought we're at a place that we've heard and acted on a majority, if not a supermajority, of the things that people said they wanted. And I felt that if I'm going to take the heat for doing it, so be it. I've worked very hard with all of you in this room to do great things for the community, and you know where I stand, and I wouldn't do it if I didn't think it was the right thing to do going forward. Because in order for us to actually have the kind of development that we would hope to have, we have to have trust with the people doing it. And if they don't trust the people they're working with, and I developed this level of trust with them over 7 years, then I don't know what we have. I mean, there's a bridge between your group and me to them, because I know what you want. Heck, you know, I was at Moral Mondays. I know exactly what we want. I was someone who sponsored and supported this board, the anti-fracking resolution. All these things that we believe in didn't come because someone came to the board and said it's a great idea. It came because we reacted to the citizens and came to the board and said we need to get in front of it and lead, not be leading from behind. And I felt that people would trust in what we've done over the years to say, you know what, they're going to do this because they think that they've got the right deal at the right time to put things in a place going forward that's good for the community. And I'm going to say a few other things that people need to hear. Number one, I oppose sprawl. I stood at that microphone in the old courthouse when Bunky Morgan stood right here and went after him. Now Bunky lives in Chatham Forest. It's kind of ironic. But I was against that. I was against the sprawl in our community. I don't consider building in the town to be sprawl. What I consider sprawl, and I oppose, is that if we were to get building in Pittsboro to still have the same level of sprawl all over Chatham County. That has to stop. It has to go somewhere. Jeff and I and others went to the legislature when Senator Atwater was our senator and Joe Hackney was our speaker, and tried to get transfer of development rights, which was supported by the Land Conservancy and others, in order to avoid sprawl. Unfortunately, Jeff and I and about, I think Tandy Jones was there. There were probably 10 really good, committed people who were at that hearing, and Senator Apodaca was in the minority at the time, and Phil Berger, I think those are names you've heard. They were in the minority, but I called him Senator Abracadabra because he made us disappear. We never even got a chance at the microphone. And we never even got to talk about transfer development rights, which I thought 6 years ago, Jeff and I worked on that, other folks in the Smart Group Committee worked on it, and thought that would be a way to take all the potential from the county and move it into the urban core where it belongs. And I actually was going to ask these gentlemen, say, look, you've got this figure of density you want, you're probably never going to get to that number. I mean, Powell Place is already downzoned a few times already. It's not really going to happen because it's got a lot of other inputs, but I would hope that you might be in a market for transfer development rights so we could take development out of the countryside and put it where it belongs, vertically and dense, so you can have transit and the other quality of life that people want and avoid sprawling out into the country. I mean, that to me really is the death of the county. Not trying to build inside of the core here. Now, I do understand the impacts. Elaine and I talked earlier. We agreed to mutually disagree. We agreed on a lot of things. One of the things she and I both agree on, and my mother agrees on this, it's population that actually affects the environment more than any single thing. So this issue of density is something that needs to be accounted for. I mean, adding more human beings who consume things we don't need is certainly going to impact the community. But if we add human beings and we do it in a willy-nilly fashion and we don't take into account and try to grow in a smart and intelligent fashion, then we really haven't done our job. And we've learned all these lessons from what's happened in the Triangle over the last 30 years. We know why we like Cary or don't like Cary. We know what's happened in Durham and Raleigh and Chapel Hill. The one great thing about Chatham County is because we're so slow to adopt anything, we've learned about every mistake from every other municipality in the state. I mean, we were the last ones to do all kinds of things. I've heard stories about 15501 getting to be a parkway in the 50s. We didn't want it. The Londons, I think, were one of those that were behind not wanting it. I've heard stories that I-40 was going to come to the other side of Jordan Lake before Jordan Lake even existed. That didn't happen. We didn't want it. I've heard stories, and this isn't even a story because I've talked to Mayor Justice, who's deceased, but Jack Justice was our mayor in 1978, and he pointed at me after he asked me if I was going to raise his taxes. And he held up a butter spoon, and I said, "You're going to stab me with a butter spoon if I raise your taxes in Pittsboro, Jack?" He started laughing, and he said, "I just want you to know, if you're our mayor, you need to know that I tried to get a water line to Jordan Lake, and I couldn't get the community to cooperate to get water out of a lake that was taking our land in 1978. And people didn't want to do it, and Cary took our water." And he wanted me to know this, and he jabbed me in my chest. All right? And he was on a respirator, so I thought it was pretty humorous that a man of that health was jabbing me with a butter knife. But he wanted me to know that this community has had a history long before most of us were either born or in the room of actually facing situations like we're facing tonight and not making the move that would affirmatively get us in a place to actually help the future. And he was very upset that he was not able to do that when he was mayor. Now, I'm not going to bore you with all my discussions with the old timers around here, some of whom liked me, some of whom didn't because they thought I was too liberal. But the fact of the matter is that we've always been able to sit down and break bread, like Gene Brooks this morning, who told my good friend Jim Crawford that I didn't really agree with Mayor Voller most of the time, but you know what? He and I both liked to read, and we traded books, and boy, we had a good time serving because we cared about the community. So he just came right out, because Gene and I fought about a lot of things. He was more libertarian than me, but we all agreed on one thing. We love Pittsboro, and we love knowledge, and we wanted to learn. And he had some things to say about this community, because he sat in Jay Farrell's chair for 26 years. He said, "Look, just like you, Randy, I'm not really, people have this wrong impression that I'm a cheerleader for it. I'm not. I mean, I'm just facing a reality here like Michael and the rest of them. It's a reality that we're going to have to wrestle with." He said to me, "Look, I've hunted all these properties. I don't really want to see Cary come here, but on the other hand, I know what you guys have been doing. I know all these agreements that you're trying to get. I know that you've come to a point where you can't ask a man to put more on their back, or they're just going to either shrug and go away, or you're going to break them." And he said, "Look, I don't want Cary either, but I didn't buy the land. There are no loans on that property. So it's not a situation where you have a developer leveraged to the hilt who has an option on property and is going to walk away. They're not walking away. And unless that they're going to give it out of their own goodness of their heart to the town, we have to engage. We have to face up to this choice. We have to face up to reality. And the only thing I think we can do is have a constructive relationship and say, look, we got to take the first step. Everyone comes in the door, and work with those guys to build the community that we want. Most of the consternation that I've heard focuses on the Southern Shore assessment and essentially the woods that we all like. I mean, I drive into town all the time. I look at those woods and I love those woods. To me, they're our birthright. Unfortunately, I don't have the bankroll to own them. But I know that it's going to be so long before we get there that if things turn out the right way, perhaps we can actually get the kind of preservation that we want, because the economics of the project change, and most of the development that has been shown to this board or members of the public or the EDC or Chamber of Commerce or whomever else they've shown it to is on the north side of town, and most of that was already approved. And the idea that Mayor-elect Terry said about just granting approval, this board brought that up months and months ago about just go ahead with the medical center. The problem is, not that we didn't want to do that, because we did. The problem is that UNC Hospital and the system actually has an awful lot more things they want to bring to us, things that have been in discussion for an awful long time, and they want the assurance of who they're dealing with and what the long-range plan is. They're not going to sign. We've seen the letter of intent for at least 5 years. But unless, so I mean, I broached this I think 3 months ago. We said, why don't we let's just grant this and move along. But we couldn't do it. They won't sign off on it. So, you know, and that's already approved, I mean, for development up there. And a lot of this stuff was already approved. I think we have 500,000 square feet of commercial that was approved. None of it's ever been built. One of the reasons it hasn't been built is the economy. The other reason is we have no coordinated development plan that would actually get people to want to build. They don't know what they're going to expect. So most of what you're going to see, you know, whether this is voted on tonight, 3 months from now, a year from now, or never voted on, if it was going to be built, you're going to see it on the north side of town, which is the logical place, toward Chapel Hill, with an access to a bypass to get to Rome. And if this community can say, all right, we don't, you know, some of us don't want this at all. Some of us are willing to accept it in some form, and some people are cheerleaders for it. Based on all the emails I've read, conversations I've had, folks that have bent my ear, we've got to come to grips with something is going to happen. How are we going to make it the best that we can make it? And, you know, if folks are angry at me because I thought, you know, working with Commissioner Fiocco and our town manager and others, you know, I wasn't, you know, greenlighting you first saying put it on, but I said, you know what? A, if we put it on, we're going to get folks out, and you're out, and you're hearing this. B, people need to move this on. It needs to be moved on. Because the steps that Michael's laid out to you actually tell you that most of what you're worried about is already being accounted for in there. Because we listened to you. In fact, the compromise that Michael referred to is one that came from Pittsboro Matters. It didn't come from the developer, I can assure you that. And it didn't come from staff, and it didn't come out of our head. I think it might have come to Mike, and we read it and said, how do we delay this and get some partial approval so that we can go forward with getting a hospital built, but still not have all this rampant development? That's what we did. Now, I will tell you about my history. John Bonnets is a friend of mine, and he talked about privilege.
What's your point?
It's 11:30, 11:45.
Well, you know, we can.
You've been talking for 40 minutes, Mayor, 40 minutes.
And I've listened to people talk for about 100 hours in my career up here, so in fact so if people don't want to hear, and I have never really engaged in giving this out, so if you don't want to hear what I have to say, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, and then I'll finish and we'll go down the line. I mean, you know, it needs to go on the record. People need to know where we stand and why we're at this place today. Most of the meetings starting 7 years ago were with Philip Culpepper, who represented them, who I think is still here. They came and talked to me and other folks, and I said, you know what? You're not going to get anything approved in this town unless you spend a lot of time going to meetings and meeting with folks and explaining what your intentions are. That's what they've been doing. Now, whether people liked it or paid attention or listened to them, I provided information to this board, which is freely available to the public to see all these meetings. I didn't know where all these meetings were. I wasn't at most of these meetings. In fact, our staff was, Mr. Terry was, David Hughes from the county, the public, the EDC. I mean, the list is voluminous. The conservation group, whether they liked what Philip said, I don't know. All I know is that Philip went to them. And Philip can tell you, actually, we've had a number of testy exchanges. Philip has actually screamed at me in the parking lot because he didn't like how I spoke to people, you know, when I was against something in Powell Place. And so it's not as if Philip and I are drinking buddies. He'll tell you right on, he did not always agree with, you know, how I treated developers or what I said about them, and I'm man enough to say it here right now. You know, I spoke out against what people were trying to do, and I still will. But he did at least do what I asked them to do, which was attend the meetings and go out in the community, and that started 7 years ago, which is a testament, you know, either to his willingness to go to the meetings and listen to folks and to follow our directive. You know, so essentially, John, I haven't actually had the privilege of being there. I asked them to do it, but you know, I have been telling you about it because I was hoping by talking to people in the last 3 or 4 years that they'd be aware of this. Apparently I failed because a lot of people have been aware, but I've been talking about the eventuality of Chatham Park for, I don't know, since the 2009 election, just saying it's coming, people need to pay attention to it, you need to get your mind around it. Well, it's here, so we're going to have to get our mind around it. And from this point forward, I think this community is going to have a relationship that is based on mutual trust, and it may be hard to ask for that. And they're going to have to work together to accomplish the things that you want, that we want. Because Pittsboro is a special place, and it's different than most communities, so this thing has to be different than what's been done in the past. Pam? Jay, or Beth, or Beth.
I mean, I'm wondering, we're having a lot of discussions all about Chatham Park, right? So this should go all night and still not get to the items.
Answer Commissioner Foley's question. Where are you on the agenda?
We are at the discussion
item, so we're at the .1 discussion
options. That's where we are.
Because we never really got into this and that. Okay, so we
I mean, I closed citizens matters, so essentially we responded. I mean, you could say that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. The portion that we're at for everybody's information is discussion options, and we are each going to talk hopefully about this particular plan or respond to some of the things which were said from the public. We're always glad that you all go through the democratic process, because this is a democracy. So we all have the option of being heard. In reference to my position during the election on Chatham Park, it's the same as it was now. It is that we are still reviewing this particular plan. That's what I always told people. We are reviewing. No decision has been made, and that is exactly what we're doing now. In reference to the subcommittee meeting, that did, as Commissioner Fiocco had indicated, that included myself, Commissioner Fiocco, as well as two representatives from the Chatham County Schools, Chief of Police, Fire Chief, and our town manager, as well as Parks and Recreation, and our planner, and our engineer. So basically, this was not any type of secret meeting. What we were doing was responding to a lot of the things which you all brought up in the public hearing. And in doing that, we broke apart the master plan to the best of our ability and presented and responded to the developer and asked them for some additional information. All that was basically an information gathering event. And basically, we did indeed listen to the public, which we are doing now. And in reference to the wastewater treatment facility, certainly we do, but the mayor has addressed that. At this particular time, the town cannot build a wastewater facility. We can't borrow the money to do it. So it is not that it's not one of our main priorities. It's just that we cannot do it at this particular point. Wastewater treatment is always one of our main priorities. Because if we plan to expand as a town, there has to be a way to treat wastewater, or you will not expand at all. So basically, in reference to this particular plan, that's what we are still doing. We want this to be done the right way for Pittsboro and its residents, and those residents that are not here. Somebody has to speak on their behalf. So basically, they may not be able to come, but we still look out after their interests as well. So again, we want this to be the right thing to do for Pittsboro. No one up here sits here and wants it to be the wrong thing to do. No one. No one wants it to be a secretive process. Everyone is concerned about the environment. We are too. We live here. We breathe this air. We drink this water. We want it to be right. So basically, we went back to the developers and said, we need additional things. And in doing that negotiation, of course, it's not really a negotiation, it is a discussion. We have our town staff, which spoke with the developers, and basically, there were some additional things which were added, some additional criteria, which within 2 years we are requesting that they make or they meet, or otherwise, they could not continue. So basically, those type of things are put in place. And we are always, again, glad to hear from the public. And Mr. Terry's idea in reference to adding 3 people, because we're not going to do another subcommittee, it would be an advisory committee, at least that would be my impression. And in doing that advisory committee, of course, he had indicated 3 people. That would be something that the town board needs to discuss. But I don't have a problem with adding anyone to someone from the public, or 3 people from the public. That would be fine with me. I don't have any problems with that. But, of course, that's a discussion that the whole board needs to take, and a position that the whole board needs to take. But again, we are here to represent the public. We represent the citizens of Pittsboro. They're the ones who voted us in, but we also represent the county as well as the state of North Carolina. Because what is good for Pittsboro is generally good for the county as well as the state of North Carolina. And in doing that, again, we have to look at this thoroughly to make sure it's the right thing to do. And that is what we will continue to do. And by the way, I am definitely in favor of it. And, but it just depends on what the other commissioners would like to do.
Thank you, Pam, and all commissioners and everybody here tonight. I guess you could say I'm pretty much overwhelmed with all this that's come through us in the last couple of years and on our first term here. I think we have a first-class developer. I am for it. I'm not ready to vote. And I would like to see this tabled, possibly for consideration with some outside consultants. I really, we get this paperwork the 21st, you just don't go into something in 5 days and take this much consideration. I really I'm not taking any side, I'm just really speaking out from my heart, but I really believe we need to address this with some consultants, professional, non-biased consultants that will have the, guess you could say, the best interest of Pittsboro. And that's all I have at this time.
Okay. I just like to say that I do believe that Chatham Park will be good for Pittsboro eventually, and I feel that there's no question that it will be good for economic development. The questions I have, will it be good for environmental issues, and I think that's the areas that we still need to work on. I'd just like to say that I'm very grateful to the work that this subcommittee has spent on this. I know they put a huge amount of time, and I'm very grateful for the work they put into it. But I do feel like that prior to Chatham Park, the biggest development that this town and staff, this board and the staff has ever done was probably a housing development, maybe 200 homes. I'm not sure how many homes are in Chatham Park.
I think it was probably.
I'm not sure how many. There's I know that Firestone Village has 192 homes. And, these are places that don't have any commercial development except for, Power Place does have a gas station. But in comparison, Chatham Park is going to have 22,000 homes and 13 million square feet of commercial and development property. And we have so much at stake here. To me, we'd be, as much as I think they've done a great job on this, we cannot be sure until I agree that we get an outside consultant to make certain, absolutely certain, that we get this right. There's just too much at stake here not to do that. And it doesn't mean that I don't support the project. I'm glad they're here. It's going to be really good for the community. But let's take the time to get it right. And I have questions one of the reasons they're putting in reuse water lines is because they're concerned that there won't be enough water for this many people, and we need to make sure there's plenty of water. Let me check my notes here. And the other thing is, we really haven't had these revisions very long at all. And honestly, this is the first time I've heard any discussion about them myself. And I think it's important that, that the community get a chance, and I appreciate that Michael's already, Commissioner Bioco's already started on that, but I do feel like that we're entitled to have another, public hearing on that, to give people a chance to respond to the revisions, and to continue to seek out ways to involve the community. We are very fortunate that we have such a, people with experience in so many different areas, and I think we'd be crazy not to take advantage of people who love to come. So. A couple of points. Mr. Chavis, I respectfully disagree with your statement that I wasn't elected here tonight to vote. I was elected to serve the people of Pittsboro. And I disagree that the revisions don't include a lot of the voices that we've heard throughout the public hearings. In fact, I think that they have been included and we're a lot closer than we've ever been. I think that Commissioner Bioco underscored that quite well. But honestly, to take less than 365 days on a development that is historically the biggest in the state, I think is incredibly short-sighted. I'm not prepared to vote. I believe that we have a really big opportunity here, and ignoring the suggestions of the mayor-elect, who laid out what I consider to be a reasonable plan, I think it's really short-sighted. I'd like to make a motion that we table the discussion and the vote of the Chatham Park rezoning application until the staff has had time to retain the services of a highly qualified planning consultant to review the town's zoning ordinance and proposed Chatham Park master plan. I further move that we direct the town manager to prepare a request for qualification for a planning consulting firm and return that draft RFQ to the Board of Commissioners not later than the second board meeting. Well, we can determine a date, but I'd like to make that motion. Second.
Discussion.
In reference to the consultant, basically, that's already been, they have been looking at that all the time. Is that not?
That's after the vote has happened, and that's after the, zoning has changed, and so then they don't really have any power.
What I'm saying is they were, is that not correct? Have you all have been looking at consultants and have been doing?
Yes, we have. That was also part of the plan, was to review all plans with not just one consultant, but possibly more than one consultant for the developer to begin to develop what the 5 years instead of 5.
I just wanted to make it known that that was already, that basically they have been looking at consultants. That wasn't anything that they had not been doing.
Commissioner?
My thought on that is that I think we've got the zoning and the master plan to a point where we're ready to start to do the heavy lifting. And we're ready to hire the consultants to help review their proposals, help us develop a unified development ordinance, and to create the vision for Chatham Park and Pittsboro as a whole. And to also show our good faith and willingness to partner with the developer and to fulfill not only our needs but their needs, because I think again we want them to be aligned, and the best way to do that is to work with somebody, not against them. And they're requesting the ability to move on some property that they can develop now with, I think, clearly items we would like to have, facilities we would like to have. So the way this has been set up, and the strategy was to allow them to get started while we develop the rest of the documents, and to limit their ability to get too far with anything, so that we're acknowledging their needs, they're acknowledging our needs. So that is the the strategy and the concept that is embedded in the master plan, so.
Well, I do believe that the master plan is what you all have done, is really good work, and it may be that, an outside consultant will say, hey, this is great, we don't need to change a thing, but I just think we need to be certain. We just need to make sure that Pittsboro is protected, and I really do commend you. It seems like you've thought about so many different things, and I really think you guys have done a fantastic job, and I commend you for your work on it. I just want to be certain, and it's nothing about your plan, it's just that we need to make absolutely certain. We've never done anything this magnitude.
I absolutely agree, but I still, to this point, we've had revisions, and we haven't received something comprehensive, and receiving it, as Commissioner Carroll said, on the 22nd or 21st or 22nd, I mean, maybe I fall short, but that's not enough time for me.
So my question is, you're gonna hire said consultant, which we talked about hiring months ago. And it didn't get hired, and there were it was issues about, I guess, could we afford it or not, and all kinds of other things, but it seems to me that Commissioner Fiocco took into account all your concerns to try to account for that. I mean, you can go through the process, but what is it that you hope to learn from at that point that you wouldn't learn 2 weeks from now or a month from now by going back and, let's say you wanted to go back and look at the revisions because you don't feel comfortable with it. Now, I think, that's fairly reasonable. But what is it that an outside consultant, which we already have plenty that work for the town, is going to tell you any different other than saying they don't like the proposal? And what happens at that point if it changes the relationship too? It feels like we came pretty far to try to bring them to a point to accommodate most of the things that the public wanted. I'm not sure.
We just need to make sure that everything is tight. We need to make sure that we didn't leave anything out. We just need to make sure the town of Pittsboro is protected. And maybe you guys have thought of everything, maybe the consultant may say this is fine, you're ready to go. I don't know, Mayor Terry, would you?
He's already said he'll have to say afterward. He was, yes, Mr.
Can't hear you.
He's asking if you'll separate your motions, so motion to table versus, motion to table and work on the consultant separately.
That would be, that makes the board happier? Or should we go ahead and ask for that?
Well, what does the board think? Do you prefer it to be in two separate motions or not?
Two separate. Okay.
So if you want to withdraw and refrain, we can just withdraw and re-put the motion out. Just say I withdraw.
Okay, I withdraw the motion.
Beth can accept. And then just reframe the motion in two motions.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we table the vote for the, Chatham Park master plan. Second.
All right. We've had discussion. I think we should, one of the consultants that works for the town board actually is Mr. Messick. Perhaps you could, since we're all here, tell him about your work on this product. I mean, I know, I personally didn't see it.
All the vote.
Look, I could call for the vote, we get the vote. I think we're all here, let's hear about this. I mean, I haven't even heard this.
Yeah.
We're not voting at this point we're not voting on it. This is a motion to table. And there's been a question. I mean, there's a motion to table that's second, and we can have discussion. So I'd like to hear Mr. Messick at least describe the process. Everybody says they want information. I didn't know about the process. I got these things at the same time everyone else did. So if you're going to say, how did that happen? How did you come forward to where you are now? It would be, that the board should hear.
We can't hear.
Okay, if that's the advice. He says he's not sure it's terribly helpful. He would just prefer to move on. Okay, so the motion on the floor at this point is to table this, and we'll just go down. All in favor, or I'll poll the board members. Commissioner Turner, table, yes or no? Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes.
Commissioner Fiocco?
Nay.
Commissioner Foley?
Yes.
Commissioner Farrell?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 4-1 table. Next motion.
Make a motion that we retain the services of a highly qualified planning consultant to review the town's zoning ordinance and the proposed Chatham Park master plan. I further move that we direct the town manager to prepare a request for qualifications for a planning consulting firm and return that draft to the Board of Commissioners, and we can set a date. I don't know which one feels reasonable. We've got to move January 2014, but I don't know what this is. Second.
Any discussion on that?
I am in agreement with Mayor-elect Terry. I think that this timeline is appropriate.
I have just one thing, regarding the timeline on that. If we go with some professional consultants, that timeline should be moved up worse than he's talking about 8-10 months. I mean, can we not have some consultants, some information in and,
I thought he said February. I was like, to reconsider the version in February. Am I incorrect? So that's 3 months. Is that what you're asking?
or maybe the first meeting in March?
Okay.
We'll have one in September.
So what are you suggesting happens in March?
Well, based on the timeline that Mayor-elect Terry proposed, I feel like we can expedite this process.
Right.
And be able to have the answers that we need by, I was gonna say February, but if Commissioner Farrell says first of March, as he's right, we only have a meeting in December.
Taking a day to have the consultant selected?
Sorry. Well, he said it the first couple of weeks in December, or.
Me.
I think it's important to work with our mayor, like he's going to be the one, working with mine.
So, to restate, you're voting on essentially putting on an RFQ on starting the process on the 9th of December, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. All opposed? Do we have any opposed to that?
Just to clarify the timeline that I proposed, if you direct the manager tonight to begin work on an RFQ and tell him the scope of what you want in an RFQ, he doesn't need to come back to the board until he's received statements of qualifications from qualified firms. He's made a selection, and his selection committee could be himself, your planner, your engineer. If you wanted to invite the planner from the county, they could participate in the selection. The board doesn't need to see the RFQ, that's administrative work for the staff. The next time the board would see it would be when the committee had to bring back to you a recommendation of which of the submitting consultants they recommend that you hire. Now, if you want to expedite this and accommodate the developer, I think, Mr. Brucebeck should obviously weigh in on this, but it seems reasonable to me that an RFQ could get out and statements of qualifications could get in, and perhaps they can make a selection sometime in mid-December. We don't have a board meeting in mid to late December, but if you wanted to hear his recommendation for who to hire, that could be a very short special meeting, 30 minutes. You get a copy of the proposal in advance and a copy of the proposed contract in advance. If you have questions, you can ask them of the manager, and then in a 30-minute meeting, you can either up or down vote on whether you want to hire that particular consultant. And the contract that he would bring you would lay out what you're instructing the consultant to do. You could have him review your zoning ordinances and review the consultant's master plan, or you could have him do some other scope of work. Give that instruction to the manager. You don't need to be involved with it again until he's got a selection to bring to you and a proposed contract and a budget amendment to pay for the fee proposal that will also come from the selected consultant. So if you want to have a meeting in mid to late December, 30 minutes an hour, unless it's very popular. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait till the first meeting in January to finalize that process of selecting a consultant. In which case, then you're pumping out your public hearing and the report from the consultant. You have to give them. I would think this is not a small task for them to read through this plan, to read through your zoning ordinance, and come up with cogent comments about the adequacy of both. Is certainly going to take more than 2 weeks. You have to ask the consultants to advise you on what they thought was a reasonable amount of time, but I'm thinking at least 30 days. They might want 60. So that's my clarification. I think if you want to assist the developer and move it along, you might have to have a special meeting in late December.
Okay, thank you. We have other things on the agenda, but I think it's pretty late. I don't know if we want to get any input on capital projects or these other things. Unless Mr. Brucebeck has something urgent, we just do a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.